Hey, what's up guys, it's Apollo Uchiha here, back with another part of What If Naruto Was in a Political Marriage. And if you haven't watched, I have already uploaded What If Naruto Was Turned into a Cult, check that out as well. And if you haven't, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel if you like the content of this channel. And without further ado, let's begin our story. Chapter 38, the starting of something new. Jiraiya coughed and spluttered blood. He was weak in the knees. Even with the help of Sage Jutsu, Ma and Pa weren't looking too good and might dispel at any moment. He tried to take in breath as quickly as he could, but it always caught on blood seeping into his lungs. Shit. Ever since he came to Rain Village, things have been going terribly. All around him there floated green and giant constructs of paper. Large beings made up of tiny little pieces of paper. More than any other enemies he had fought before, they were difficult to kill. No hand to hand, they might split apart at impact and try to skewer him. No genjutsu because they were paper, and it was almost impossible to tell Konan's true location to put her under anything. Only ninjutsu, and never that, had its limit. She must have been prepared. She must have been knowledgeable of his presence in Rain far before he had even got there. Paper so thoroughly created to be quite indestructible, and at such a large amount was no small feat, even if he hadn't seen his student for years and years. Speaking of Konan, she was idly floating up in the air with those two paper angels' wings she was evidently so proud of. Tiny flecks of blood stained those wings. His blood. Jiraiya was so confused of this situation. Where were Yahiko and Nagato? Of all the three of his students, those two were the best at fighting. Konan usually used up a sporting role. Yet here she was, looking down on him with no emotion on her face. Jiraiya would have thought she was a robot with the look on her face being the way it was. Jiraiya boy, Pa said, it's not safe, you have to pull out. I can't, he hissed back. Kage is planning something. She isn't the leader, so I need to know where he is. It could be bad. Jiraiya boy, Ma yelled. Now's not the best time to be gallant. Your safety comes first. Jiraiya took several seconds to answer. The village safety comes first. He looked up, and Konan thoroughly his toad-like eyes. Why wasn't she doing anything? She only attacked when he attacked her, or when he tried to get out into the open. The only answer she gave was cryptic and strange, yet she was strangely forthcoming with pieces of her plan. But he needed all of it. What sort of attack strategy the leader was planning, what the rest of Akatsuki were, what the bigger picture was, those were the things he needed. He looked up at the unresponsive face of Konan. What was it that made her that way? He was her goddamn teacher. What was it he could have done to make her hate him so earnestly? What was it that he did to make such a bubbly and shy personality become so vengeful? And why wasn't she acting? Jiraiya pulled out a kunai and held it on a cross hold. Several of her wing papers levitated perpendicular to the ground and folded themselves into shurikens in response. He threw the kunai at her neck just as the shurikens scattered and flew at him. His kunai punctured her throat, though it had no effect. The paper that made up the outer layer of her body just knit itself back together, but he had been expected that. What he had been hoping for, yet didn't expect, was for the shurikens which had been aiming for his vitals to suddenly changing direction and clip him in the arms and legs. Despite the pain he was in, he couldn't help but smile. So that was her game. She was acting that way. But her face showed, and what her heart thought were two different things. She had absolutely no intention of killing him. She just wanted to slow him down, to stall him, to keep him away from something happening. That meant that whatever the leader of the Akatsuki was doing, he was doing it right then, and Konan was trying to keep him away from it. There were only two places that the leader of a terrorist mercenary organization would want to go to The land of iron, where the Kage were, or the land of water, where the contract members were. They might even be going to both areas, planning to throw the elemental nation in chaos in one fell swoop. No, right then, it didn't matter what exactly they were planning. It just mattered that he not be there to stop it from happening, which was a real fear that Conan and the Akatsuki had. Ma, Pa, Jiraiya whispered, with little blood and breath from his lungs. I take it back. We should go home. No. His statement was cut short as he had to duck more paper shurikens flying his way. Out of the corner of his eye, one of the paper construct jumped at him and sent a giant appendage flying down at him. Jiraiya rolled out of the way and hopped to one of the walls, where he stuck onto it. Surveying the situation, he was on the wall just long enough to see blades of paper cut through the air. He spewed out oil from his mouth and logged down the ones directly headed for him. Every other one slicing into the construct until almost all of them were invisible from how far they cut into it. Jiraiya jumped away from the wall as the paper kept peppering his previous locations. Conan wasn't pulling any more punches. She must have figured out what he figured out and concluded that his death was unavoidable. Jiraiya had a new directive: cause enough destruction that he could bust out and get away from her long enough but to be reserved, and worse, teleported and warned the Kage of impending doom. Oh, and send a telegram to Naruto's way or something. If his wives were in danger, he should definitely know. Link break. A few minutes before then, they mentioned in the land of water. Uchiha was woken abruptly from her catnap in the form of a certain sandy mistress falling in her room in a puff of smoke. The subsequent groans of pain and confusion acted as her alarm clock. Just as Temari got up and the smoke cleared, a pillow hit her head with such force as to unbalance her and send her trembling back to the ground. More groans of pain rang out from her vocal cords. What the fuck? Temari asked, to no one in particular. She still doesn't even know what was happening or what had happened. First she was meditating on a slab of a rock on a spire in Toad Mountain. Then she was hurting on the hard wood floor on the mansion. When she got up the next time, she was slightly less forthcoming with sounds of pain as she surveyed her surroundings. She looked around and noticed the lights coming in through the windows and the fact that Uchiha probably shouldn't be sleeping due to the fact that there were violently pregnant women around. She also realized who and what hit her face. Tucking the pillow under her arm, she walked out the doorway and into the living room to check up on Fu and Kurtasuchi and perhaps get some answers as to why she had been suddenly teleported miles and miles away. She found Kurtasuchi and Fu snoring peacefully away on the living room couch. Within arm shreds and arm reaches, there was a bucket full of frantic puke, and the TV was playing a sort of soothing ocean noise program. Fu groaned a bit in her sleep and rubbed her pregnant belly with a slight frame like hers. The pregnancy had to be hitting her harder than most. In fact, Kurtsuchi should also be affected fairly heavily from her boyish frame. Temari tutted at such a sight. It was an accident, them getting pregnant and all, but they really should have practice safe sex a bit more heavily than just anti-pregnancy jutsu. A combination of their youth and not exactly womanly frames were wreaking havoc on their bodies. Temari gently looked the handle of the bucket and brought it over to the kitchen, where she cleaned it out, and when one of the person was pregnant, the whole family was pregnant. When two people were pregnant, the whole family was crazy. Temari brought the bucket back to the living room and laid it on the ground next to them. Knowing that she wasn't going to be getting any concerted answers from anyone anytime soon, she contented herself with the channel suffering and ignoring the weird nap sounds that Kurtsuchi and Fu made. After a few seconds of boredom, she clicked the TV off and started to wander around the mansion. Even if she had been there for several weeks by that point, Temari had actually never really explored the place. There was the training room, entertainment room, bath bathroom extensions, her room, Naruto's room, and the indentation in one of the hallways where a shadow clone of Naruto who had been taken over by Kurama was sleeping. It would appear that the Biju had very different sleeping schedules than humans. The only thing that was differentiated the rest of the mansion from the part she had just begun to explore were tiny little asynchronous types of things. No bedrooms was arranged in quite the same way. No hallway shrubbery was placed at exactly the same spot. Nothing to denote any spectacular change in decorations or direction or appearance or anything. But everything had a sort of eerie similarity to it. Every hallway shroud looked exactly the same, even though she knew no one cared for them. There must be someone or some sort of function in the seal's arrangement to make the plants so similarly uniform. Temari sighed into her palm and leaned on a wall in a uniform bedroom. She needed to find out what was wrong. The main advantage with the mansion was how protected it was, but the disadvantage was how it was nearly impossible to get information on a nearly deserted island in the middle of a buttfuck nowhere. She did have one thing though. It was a sort of thing that had not been on her mind as of late because of a lack of reasons to use it. Temari bit her thumb and made the hand seal for the summoning technique, then slammed her hand against the wall. Sealing a ray spread out from them, and in a puff of smoke out popped her personal summon, Kamatari. He looked around a bit and held the giant Kama that he came with threatening in all directions before he turned his attention back to Temari. Temari-sama, what is the meaning of this? There is no danger, he said in a gravelly tone. She knelt down and rubbed his head. I know, she said. There is the thing I need you help with. It's not combat related. He growled a bit. I'm a warrior. I fight. This is what I'm summoned for. I do not enjoy idle chit-chat, he said harshly. I'm not asking for idle chit-chat, Temari said seriously. I need information. How far away is, well, wherever you live in the mount. Wherever the toads live. Kamatari settled down and rested on his hunches. If I run with the wind, 30 minutes maybe. Good. I need you to summon back to where you live and head to Mount Toad. Around the giant rock spirals, there's a human male, practicing not falling off of them. I need you to get him and come back here. Kamatari crawled again. I'm not a shuttle business. I am a warrior of weasels. Does this mean nothing to you? Temari looked to the side in thought. That was the thing with the weasels. Whether it was cooking, fighting, building, destroying, they were a one-track mind kind of animals. They didn't really make for rousing speech partners. If Temari had meant to convince him to do something that didn't include cutting something up, she had to do some pretty convincing acting. She sniffled. She began to subtly breathe in large amount of air very rapidly in an effort to make her face red. I know that you aren't shuttle, and I'm sorry, but you see, he's my husband. I just have a horrible feeling. She paused to hold her stomach and take a shuddering breath. Please help me out. Just this once. Kamatari looked at her for a while before he averted his eyes and stared at the ground. He began to do a sort of half grumbling, half growling sound only animal summonings were capable of producing. I swear if you mention this to any living soul, I will part our contract as it is. Saying that, he puffed away in smoke, leaving Temari in to regain her normal facial expression. Well, that was easy. She paused herself mid-sentence and whirled around to face her behind her. There had been a noise, a sight, almost non-existent rustling sound that came from behind her. The only thing behind her though was a shelf, a fern in pot, and a bed. Temari pushed her hand behind her without tearing her eyes from the normal-looking bedroom and brushed up against the splotch of ink. At the touch of her hand, it expanded into a web full of tiny little indentations and sliders, all with their own unique functions. One was slightly larger than the rest, so Temari was able to touch it by memory without looking away. Instantly, what looked like fissures began to spread all across the room as all the hidden array ink lit up. through its chakra marks. There were tiny little dots all along the walls, floors, ceilings, symbolizing all the hidden living things uh, aside the floors of the buildings. And Temari could feel her own body begin to light up a bit. The fern was also glowing slightly. Thanks to the fact that the array covered such a huge space and had some sort of self-replenishing chakra store, it had the huge amount of power required to light up all biological chakra signatures in a given radius. There was no hiding techniques, genjutsu or invisibility ninjutsu that could hide from such a function. Temari stared all around the room a few more times before sighing to herself and undoing the power on the seal. She didn't know why, but she had a really bad feeling right then. It was also the feeling that made her want to go get Naruto, someone she could rely on, as well as the feeling that made her constantly turn around and check to make sure there was no one behind her, staring at her intently. There was never, though. Temari didn't like it at all. Slowly, she turned around and jogged down the hallway back to the living room where Kurotsuchi and Fu were continuing the rest. Temari checked behind her again. There was no one there. It was eerie, the feeling of being in a huge, mostly quiet mansion with only the sleeping to give her company. And the plants that would usually twitch when out of sight every now and then. Link break. Somewhere in the land of lightning. Yo, 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 you better back up or you gonna get caught up. Suigetsu sweat drop. That didn't even rhyme. He whispered to Sasuke. Shut up, Sui. We're here to capture the Jinchuriki. No, criticize his rhyming, Karin said, emphasizing her point by slapping him on the back of the head. While the two of them were fighting, Sasuke, Juko, and Kisame sized up their opponent. Sasuke withdrew his sword and Kisame began unwrapping the Samehara menacingly. I always wondered what octopus tastes like, Kisame said as he licked his lips. We need him alive, Sasuke asked. People lived through shark attacks. It was there, a while away from the village hidden the clowns. They're naughty but themselves, with naught but themselves, mountain peaks, clouds, and moisture as witnesses to capture the Hachibi Jinchuriki. Link break. Somewhere in the land of iron, Tsunade began rubbing her temples. Sharing a circular table with her were Oniki, Ei, Gara, Mifune, Ao. And behind her were the crippled forms of Danzo, who was flanked by his rude bodyguards. Behind Gara was his brother and his former teacher. Next to Ao was Chojuro. Behind Oniki was Akatsuchi, as well as some man that looked like he just got done swimming 200 miles. Behind Ai were his bodyguards C and Darui. Somewhere in another far-off room were the daimyos. To her knowledge, they were content to just play cards and let the military leaders do what they did best, leading the military executions. There was only one problem with that, though. It looked like the brunt of the attack plan would fall on Konoha, which upset her greatly. Cloud didn't have many Black Ops agents suited for search and destroy missions, nor did they have any knowledge of where Akatsuki hideouts were in their country. Sand wasn't much better off in the regard, and Mist was still having troubles recruiting suitable people for their covert operations even after several years of peace. Oniki came up with a plan of contacting the Akatsuki again and telling them to their hideout to hopefully kill some of their higher-ups. But Tsunade knew that was doomed to failure. Even if Stone had done business with them before, Akatsuki as an organization was far too suspicious to let any of the actual fighters come in contact with who they were doing business with. There was a thing called bitch work in the mercenary industry. Anyone who had any sorts of clout over there would never stoop to bitch work levels, and anyone who had to do bitch work would never come in contact with those who didn't want to stoop to their levels. It was a system that worked marvelously for them so far. All of this indecision, bullheadedness, and downright stupidity was what was making Tsunade wishing for someone, anything to take her mind off their little sit-down with the samurai. And exactly what she got. She just wished she got something other than the room blowing up. The circular table, the leaders were sitting up, imploded violently and spat out large chunks of sharp wood and bullet speeds. Huge amount of dust were kicked up into the air, then suddenly gravitational anomaly obscuring visions for all involved. Most of the everyone were unsaged, having reacted fast enough and with great enough defenses that there were only minor cuts and disorientations. Rock concealed in the room, lightning charged throughout the space. Clicks of mechanical puppets were drowned out of the ringing in everyone's ear. Everyone was in defensive and waiting for the smoke to clear down, that they could get a rough idea what was going on. When the visibility returned enough, they saw 6 figures standing in the room, right where the table blew up. They all had orange hairs, save one who didn't have any. They all had piercings in their bodies and faces. They were all emotionless and they all had Trinicon. As of now, they all chanted in unison. Akatsuki is at war with the elemental nations. Oniki couldn't help it. He had to chuckle in a way that only an old man could chuckle. Well, this is going to make finding them a whole lot easier. Then the entire room blew up into chaos, actions and general lethality. Link break. Back at mansion, Temari was packing and pacing back and forth in the living room. Only the seconds of 2 occupied rooms in the eternity of the large house. Fu and Kuretsuchi were still asleep and showed no sign of waking up, and there were sounds coming from Yujito's room. It began to appear that Yujito was up and about. The reason for her uneasiness came from the strange concurrent series of events that followed her of the last few days. She knew she needed Naruto right then, if not for her safety, then at least for his. She didn't feel safe, not anymore. Another light shuffling sound came from behind her, and to which she wheeled around to face, only to be faced with a disappointing lack in intruders. Anything at that point would have been better than nothing. She had started pacing again, but not noticing another shrubbery joined her in the room. She also didn't know of the patchworked 100-year-old zombie outside her house, waiting for a signal for an idiot happy shrubs and an angry shrub. Not that she couldn't have known that the little tidbit of information anymore. As this is where I'm going to be leaving this part of, guys. I hope you like this one, and if you do, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel. And yeah, this is Apollo Uchiha and I'm signing out. Peace.